Good evening. If we could just start making our way to the seats, we'll begin our meeting. We're very left-handed here. Stage left is packed. Stage right, plenty of room. Yeah. There, you got a verse. Everyone's on the right. Yeah, everything's good. And it's all the same. And it doesn't even matter how you become a South people. Those are all my South peeps right there. All the teachers. Yeah, well, that's every meeting. Yes. Anytime. Yeah. Well, good evening, everybody. Introduce myself. I'm Michael Sitta, Superintendent, Toms River Regional Schools, and I'd like to welcome to our informational meeting. We're going to talk about several things tonight that are impacting our kids. We're going to talk a little bit about our budget. We're going to talk about the regionalization, how that came to be and how that affects our students and our budget, and then getting into a true town hall discussion and hopefully get some good back and forth with anybody here who might have questions that need answering, that we can continue to update our FAQs and our websites for everybody around our townships. Because, you know, in a couple of weeks on April 16th, the polls will open and our communities here will be making some decisions to change basically the course of Toms River Regional Schools, if you so choose to, and the decision will be ours and as a community and yours to do. And you need to be educated and ask as many questions as you want. There's certainly no questions that we can't answer and or find an answer for you. So I look forward to that a little bit later. By no means is tonight about to influence a decision one way or another in this process. It's about to educate on the facts and all the facts surrounding all of the things that have happened to Toms River in the last 7 years due to finances and some of the solutions that we could possibly provide moving forward. And if not, what's next, right? Because these are our kids and that's just too important for any of us. So I really do appreciate everybody taking the time out tonight to come and be here with us. I want to recognize some of our Board of Education members that are here tonight. If we can just recognize Mr. Kidney from Pine Beach, just came in. Mrs. Morrison from Beachwood, right here. Our board president, Kathy Egan from Toms River. I do see Mrs. Howe somewhere. We're there, straight in the back from Toms River. And I know she's got some kid things today, and she was there last night, so she'll be bopping in and out. And I don't know if I missed anybody else. But again, I appreciate everybody being here tonight, and I look forward to having this discussion. So I guess we'll start at the beginning. And at the beginning, I want to talk a little bit about our budget and what has happened to Toms River over the last couple of years, how it's happened, why we're kind of in a situation where, I'm going to shake some big numbers at us and let you know how we got there. You know, this is going to start out doom and gloom. My intent is not to be doom and gloom, but to give you the facts and understand, you know, what our directions are, what my decision-making process is, along with our Board of Education and school district, on how we provide opportunities to children. So currently, we are facing a 24-25 school year budget with a $26.5 million deficit. $26.5 million deficit to balance a budget at a minimum to create what is considered a thorough and efficient education, okay? There'll be a lot of different buzzwords that you hear out of my mouth. Thorough and efficient is a term that the state uses that says this is what you have to provide. You have to, in the law, provide a thorough and efficient education for your children. And I'm telling you, before we begin and tell the story, we are $26.5 million away next year of being able to provide that minimum for our children, and that's not okay. That's not okay. And we'll talk about how we're going to address that, but I want to talk back how we've gotten there. 7 years ago, as the state funding formula started to take a change, and they passed that bill called S2. S2 was supposed to redistribute tax allocations across the state of New Jersey to make it more equal for districts that weren't getting what they considered their local fair share, and to make districts pay more that weren't paying their local fair share. So Toms River fell in the category of not paying enough taxes. Okay, so we were what you call S2 losers, along with about 200 other districts out of 600 districts in the state of New Jersey. And over the course of those 7 years, a formula that was supposed to redistribute a category in the aid formula called equalization aid and adjustment aid. Yes. We were supposed to lose about $10 million in adjustment aid. And then we were supposed to kind of balance that back out. This is in 2018. So sometimes when I talk in Trenton a lot lately with a lot of stakeholders, I talk about unintended consequences. So they built this formula with these ways in this S2 bill, and they had this plan to redistribute. And at the beginning in 2018, it was about a $10 million redistribution from Toms River. That hurts our kids, but if that was all that happened over those 7 years, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, okay? What happened as a result of the finances and the formula that they won't produce to us over the course of time, over those 7 years, cumulatively, total, year after year after year after year, we have now lost $137 million. 59% of our state aid funding. Okay? Guys with me on that one? That's a big hit. Now, in the meantime, we were asked to raise taxes to make up for those things, but the law only allows you to raise taxes 2% a year, max. In fact, you have to if you're in this situation. So we have been. So those taxpayers in Toms River that are sitting here and look at their tax bill and they say, you know, Mr. Sitta, you're going to talk about plans that maybe have zero tax impact to us or savings. How's that going to work? Because my tax bill goes up every year. It does because it has to by 2%, and that's the law. But the 2% that we've raised over 7 years doesn't even come close to the amount of aid that we have taken away. So obviously there are unintended consequences of a formula that doesn't work. So we've been testifying in Trenton, and I believe we have board members testifying tomorrow. Ms. Palazzo's testifying tomorrow? All right. And I've testified last week in districts all over the state. And I think the state of New Jersey has finally realized that this formula doesn't work. But in the meantime, a district like Toms River, one of the biggest losers in this situation, has found itself with a $27 million problem moving into next year, one that cannot be cured or cured alone by raising taxes or doing anything else. I really don't know what the solution is. We're going to talk about them, but I mean, how do you make up $27 million in 1 year? Because what they've done to kind of help us in the last couple of years is compounded the problem. And again, I'm going to give you another buzzword, stabilization aid. And I'll use last year as an example. Last year, we were facing a $13.4 million budget hole into last year's school year, if you guys recall. And I spoke to a lot of our staff and our community and at board member meetings. And Toms River Regional Schools took the position because we had to, because over the last 7 years, not only have we lost $137 million, we have cut hundreds of positions and opportunities for children along the way. So when we came as an administrative group and I became superintendent, and this would have been anybody in this seat, we've hit the point where we can't cut anything else in Toms River because our students don't deserve any more cuts, our staff doesn't deserve any more cuts, and our taxpayers don't deserve any more burden on their shoulders to make sure that our kids get an equal opportunity like every other district in the state of New Jersey that is benefiting from this financial swing. So we made a decision last year that we are going to present, because we have to. I have to sign a budget by law that says I'm providing a thorough and efficient education. Again, those are the state's words on what we need to provide. And they have a formula called SFRA. And in that formula, there is a number on what you should be spending as a district in order to be thorough and efficient. There are many districts that are under that number. That number is called adequacy. It's another buzzword, adequacy. Many districts are under that number. Nobody, again, grand prize winners of being efficient, we are under that number by $91 million a year. I'm saying that we need 26 and a half to get to the door, but the state's saying you actually need 91 million. Think about that. They took money away from us. They're saying we're short 91. I'm saying we can do the job with 27 million more. Something's wrong. It doesn't work. But you know what? We need solutions. And we need to move things forward. Because if I had to cut, which we will not, and I repeat to our kids, and it's a promise from all of us to you and your children, will not create a budget that cuts one thing, one opportunity, one milestone for your lives because you deserve it. We will not. And we will put that back on the state to come up with our solutions for us, or we'll come up with our own. And we're going to talk about that as we move along in this story tonight. But if I had to, what does $26.5 million look like as a cut in Toms River of a $271 million budget?
155,
55. I counted debt service.
and then we'd be up to 290.
All right. Mr. Doring's here to keep my numbers in check.
I fact check.
Yes, handsome one too, I might add. Yeah. What would we lose? Over 400 more positions. After losing hundreds already, 400 more. I couldn't even tell you what that would look like in class sizes. You know, I mean, you're talking 40s and 50s. Every non-mandated thing that we have in our budget, which includes kindergarten, athletics, extracurriculars, this great play that's going off tomorrow morning, all those things, and we still wouldn't be able to hit $26.5 million, which is why we're not doing it. But we need to do something because I have to sign a budget that is going to be balanced, correct? So what are our options? Our options are and have been, we continue to bend the ear of Trenton and the stakeholders and the legislators, and we are continually to do that and come up with a plan that rights that wrong and gets us what we need to open the doors, because come September, our students will show up. They need a proper education. They need the opportunities that they have. And we don't even think they need the opportunities they have. We need more. And I'm very proud, and we got a lot of staff in here today. I'm very proud over those last 7 years. Let's just talk about what we have accomplished, right? And with the resolve, tenacity, love, and compassion that the people in the community in this room have, what have we accomplished? We have instituted pre-vocational programs. We have added different strands to our academies. We've added different clubs and activities in all of our schools. We have put guidance counselors in every elementary school when we used to share them. We've done that by taking our dollars, reallocating them the best we can, putting our best foot forward, showing up for our children, and making a difference every day. And that's because of you, everybody in this room. And that's what makes it all worth it, right? That's what makes having these discussions, going around, moving us forward worth it, because we're very proud of the product we produce and we know what we produce. You go to graduation and you hear about all the different accomplishments our graduates get and where they're going and what they bring back. And all we ask for in Toms River Regional Schools is that recommitment to our community, because we want to create the next generation of Toms River to come back and plant their roots and give back to where they belong. About 75 to 85% of our staff were Toms River Regional Schools students. If you were and you're in the room, raise your hand. Turn around, look around. That's everywhere I go. Why? Because somewhere along the line, somewhere or something or somebody lit a little flame inside of you to come back and make a difference in the community that inspired you and gave you the opportunities to get where you need to go. That's our job, to make sure those opportunities exist for our students that are here and our students that are at home, and continue that over and over again. And that commitment is not going to dissolve with a little adversity that equates to dollars. So how do we deal with it? Well, hopefully, a lot of the lobbying will change the circumstances that we have, and hopefully they show up in ways that are impactful, because I'm going to give a couple of other buzzwords right out here. And the first buzzword I'm going to give you is stabilization aid. Last year, we were able to survive that $13.4 million because of stabilization aid, 10 million given back by the legislature from the 14.4 that they cut. And we sold some, hi, Mrs. Plaza, another board member from South Toms River. Nope, you're good. And we were able to sell some trees next to Silver Bay that remain trees to fill in that 13.4 million. So we had no cuts to programs without taking any of the other options, right? But those things were one-time fixes. So when you hear the state coming up, and you're going to hear it a lot in the newspaper, with the $107 million that districts in S2 lost this year, and the state legislators and the governors and everybody getting together and work about fully funding this year's budget, and let's not there be any cuts. And we're going to take that $107 million back, possibly in a bill or two. Okay, so for us, that would mean $2.8 million of what they took this year. What they don't tell you is the money they gave us back last year is gone again too. Our cut this year isn't $2.8 million. It's 17.2, 14.4 plus 2.8. It's 17.2 plus all the things that we've done in the last 7 years with bubble gum and duct tape and things to make sure that our eye was on our kids' programs to keep us moving forward during these S2 cuts. Like, we took $6 million in that federal money, COVID money, a couple of years ago. That was a federal grant. We took out of district tuition, and we used those dollars because we needed to not cut programs, something no good accountant would ever tell you or advise you to do. We had to do to keep our kids' programs, but that money's gone this year. So throw that $6 million on top of the 17.2. Then let's talk about how our districts changed. Our districts changed a lot, and we're proud of the changes in the community we are and we've become. But 7 years ago, we were, I think, 20 or 21% minority population in our district. Right now, we're 41%. Okay? And along with that, we have had our free and reduced lunch population is now close to 40% in our district, as opposed to 13 or 14%, right? So our poverty level has gone up, but yet we still keep losing aid. So some of the critics say, but Mr. Sitta, you used to have 17,000 students. Shouldn't you have lost that aid because you were getting aid based on 17,000 students? And how many students do you have now? Well, we have about 14,700 and change students now. And I'm happy to say our population has not only leveled off, but starting to increase all across our district, right? We've kind of leveled off based on whatever demographic changes we've had in our town and our community. And my answer to that is we have. Every time our population has changed, Toms River Regional Schools has made the appropriate adjustments to maintain the class sizes that we have. We didn't decrease class sizes. Through attrition and staff, we are the lowest spending district in the state of New Jersey out of the 95 school districts that qualify in our category, right? The lowest. Nothing to brag about. That means we spend the least amount of money on our children, our staff, and our education. Which also leads us to believe, what do you have left to cut if you're already the lowest spending? Nothing. So here we are. I just lost my train of thought. And here we are, and we need to come up with these solutions, right? The lowest spending district. So I already said solution number one. Solution number one, they changed the formula. We get our $26.5 million back. Because I already told you, we're not cutting programs and we're not cutting positions because we can't, because I can't sign a budget that provides a thorough and efficient education. Option two, and the state of New Jersey already recognized this for us because we are the lowest spending, that we are a great candidate for a state loan. Thank you. A state loan. $27 million state loan that our taxpayers have to pay back over time. It goes in the back of our taxpayers. It also is a one-time, like stabilization, fix to a problem. We don't have a spending problem. We have a revenue problem. We don't have a mechanism to raise taxes to get what we need. And if they changed the law and gave it to us tomorrow, how do you raise $27 million in taxes in 1 year? You can't. It's an unfixable problem. So if we get a state loan of $26.5 million this year to maintain our programs, yes, we have status quo this year, but next year, what's our issue? Is it $53 million that they got to give us for a loan or more based on other expenses? Now I know why I lost my train of thought. Because the critics who say you lost this enrollment, right? Shouldn't you be closing schools to make up the difference? And I want to make that clear. The governor didn't say to Toms River, you need to close schools. He made a general comment about districts in our situation should close schools. So I could say, maybe did he infer it? Possibly, but I'll address it. But he didn't say Toms River specifically. I just want to, that's the nicest thing I'm going to say about the governor tonight. So over that time, we've shrunk our staff, I told you, hundreds through that time of losing those 1,300 students. Now, if you took 30 kids per class and you divided it by the 1,300 students, you're looking at 40-something classrooms that would have needed to be closed, right? Could that possibly be one school building? Certainly. But what else has happened in our population and our enrollment in the meantime? Because there are other factors to enrollment than just your overall population. Our special ed population has increased 20% over those 7 years, which has increased the special ed budget 45%, or if I want it in dollars, $17.6 million more we spend on special education for our children that deserve the proper education in our own district. Not being farmed out somewhere else, but they deserve that education here. So how do you manage when you lose 137 million, but you have to spend 17 million more on special education? Or in our ESL population that is just booming in the last couple of years, 343% over the last 7 years, over 600% it's increased in the last 2 years. That increase to that line item in the budget is 163%, or another $1 million in ESL teaching to our budget. So we've had to reallocate every year, reallocate our teachers based on retirements and whatnot to make sure that we have those special ed teachers or those ESL teachers. We're not getting extra funding for that. We're going in an opposite direction. But if you did the math on students and maybe 9 to 12 students per special ed class population, and you did that math and you multiplied it, we've put more classrooms back in our district than we lost in enrollment. So space is still at a premium in Toms River Regional Schools. So no, Governor, we cannot close a school. We need the funding, right? So along with a state loan comes a state fiscal monitor. That happens, you don't have to look any further than Lakewood and Jackson. That is somebody who's going to come in and overlook the finances in Toms River, which I'm extremely confident, being the lowest spending and very well efficient district that we are, especially in our business office, all right, running, that they're not going to find anything to cut. In fact, they'll probably have to report back to the state that we need more things. But the truth is we lose that control. And that brings us to why we're kind of here tonight. And I really want to talk about regionalization and the vote. And again, this isn't about convincing you to do one thing or another. What I just gave you are the problems that exist in Toms River over the last 7+ years that will be here, that we are dealing with in and outside of regionalization, okay? Two separate issues, but somehow they tie a little bit together. And I'll tell you why, okay? First, let's talk about how regionalization came about, because it didn't come about as a way to solve our budget crisis. It came about because several years ago, Seaside Heights and the borough were receiving transitional aid for repairs from Superstorm Sandy and repairs from the big fire on the boardwalk. And part of receiving that money from the state of New Jersey, they had to go into different studies with different entities to see if there were shared service things that they could do to save money in their borough. It was a requirement for them to get that funding. So prior to me being superintendent, and I think it was Tom Gianella, acting interim superintendent at the time, Seaside Heights Borough came over and they entered into a feasibility study on send-receive situation with Seaside Heights Elementary School, Hugh J. Boyd, and Toms River Regional Schools. And our board at the time entered in the study with no obligation to do anything whatsoever. And about the first year I came into office, the first month I came into office, the results of that send-receive study hit our desk and we began to review them. And just to give you a little insight of how we review things in Toms River Regional Schools, how I review things and how every decision that I make goes. It goes in a simple order. It's like, keep it simple, stupid, right? Because I don't know if I could do anything more. I need to keep it simple, stupid, and focus. So, and my South people are like, yes, he does. And that is, I ask myself 3 questions. Is it good for kids? And if it is, does it help support our staff to make sure the kids what they get they need? And third, how does that affect the taxpayers? Because I'm accountable to our taxpayers on every dollar that we spend. So if the decision that I make is good for kids, supports our staff, and is explainable to our taxpayer, then it's a go. So that's the mindset before I get a send-receive feasibility study. So the feasibility study comes, and what that is, send-receive, is different than regionalization. It says all the kids in Hugh J. Boyd and their staff would come to Toms River Regional Schools, and the Seaside Heights Borough or Board of Education would pay a cost per pupil to send the teachers and the staff to Toms River, and there would be a savings to the taxpayers of Seaside Heights of about $1.5 million, and an annual savings to the Toms River Regional Schools taxpayer to tune about $500,000, approximately $500,000 a year. So I go through my categories. Is it good for kids? Well, let's see. We're going to take 175 students from Seaside Heights and Hugh J. Boyd, bring them over to an elementary school, and then move them to a middle school in 6th grade. And then in 7th grade, put them on a bus to go to Central Regional. Not good for kids, right? It disrupts their education. It disrupts our education, and it's not good. It never made step 2 or 3. So that was a hard no. So part of that study asked to go back to the drawing board and talk about what regionalization is. So regionalization is just what we have here in Beachwood and South Toms River, Pine Beach and Toms River. It's the entire tax levy towards education that you get in your towns goes to Toms River Regional Schools, and equally together, Toms River's, Beachwoods, Pine Beach, and South Toms River's dollars get equally allocated to our students across our 4 municipalities in our 19 school districts, 19 school buildings, because you got to include our preschool kids at the ELC, right? And that's how they get their education and their opportunities. So in this case, you would have Seaside Heights, and originally in the study, the plan called for the closing of the H.J. Boyd School, and those students, and I got to pick the school because of I know where we have space and be able to accommodate them, Eastover, and based on proximity, remember, we have kids that come to Toms River from Ortley Beach, Normandy Beach, they drive past Seaside Heights every day over the bridge, and they come to school at Eastover. Anyway, so to be consistent with that, that is the location that we chose, and we did the study, and the study found that it's feasible for their education. We'll have continuity of education, meaning these kids will have the opportunities that all of our children have in Toms River. They will have the expertise, love, compassion, and veracity that are shared earlier with you from Toms River Regional Schools staff. Their staff would become part of our family. And just like South Toms River, Beachwood, Pine Beach, and our community at Toms River, we're the greatest little district in the history of the world, right? I mean, 52 square miles, 110 or 15,000 residents amongst the 4 of us. And yet you almost know everybody's name. There's 6 degrees of separation just in small conversations with all of you, probably related to 3/4 of you. I apologize for that. It's definitely my father's flawed DNA that's ruining this town. So, yeah, that's right. So anyway, I digress. I got to make myself laugh a little bit. So I think my daughter's here so she can say, "Dad, bad dad joke," right? I just learned today, side note, what, bruh? Who gets that at home? Bruh? Bruh? I said, does that mean you're cold and confused? Like, bruh? Anyway, dad joke. There you go. It's for you, Sophia. I hadn't lost my train of thought. Bruh. So here we are. Is it good for kids? You're not getting on a bus 45 minutes to an hour and making several stops from Seaside to Central. You're coming 10 to 15 minutes to Intermediate East and High School East. I think the kids in Seaside Heights and the demographic being I just told you what our demographic is. We're very similar. The needs are the same in our district. And we're talking about less than 300 students pre-K through 12th grade. So is there an educational benefit for those kids? Is it good for kids? In my opinion, yes. And just so you know, in the study, if you're in Central Regional, you have a child that is already in high school there, they'll have the option to stay. Nobody wants to ruin their continuity of education either. We would pay tuition back for those students to remain there if they so choose. So then the second part of my little litmus test is it good for staff? Does it support us? Well, the tax levy coming over is going to give us resources to support all of our children, not just the Seaside Heights children, but also in the first case, in Eastover's case, the taking of their staff and moving them to Eastover would have reduced class sizes at Eastover. So a kindergarten class of 25 might go to 21, and so on and so forth. So does that benefit staff and give them the resources to do a better job? I say yes. So 1, 2, check. So now let's talk about the taxpayers. Is there a benefit to our taxpayers? And this is where I want you to pay attention, because This isn't what stabilization aid or a student or state loan is. That is a compounded structural revenue deficit, right? This is sustainable revenue, one that doesn't go away and gets compounded over the years. So the tax levy from Seaside Heights comes over every year, as it does in Beachwood, South Toms River, Pine Beach, and Toms River, and it goes into the pot. So in the first 10 years, the study says Seaside Heights is going to save about $9 million in tax levy. Toms River will benefit and save $35 million. Beachwood, 2 million,
Million,
400,000 and 440,000 South Toms River,
80,
80. Sorry, I didn't want to shortchange you. 480 and
600.
680 in Pine Beach. So that's the projections, and those projections we honestly feel are a little low for our residents and the future of the taxes. Now that's a savings. What does that mean? Because on the ballot questions, you're going to see a ballot question that says those numbers, and then it's going to get to Toms River because it gets wordy and wordy, saves tens of millions of dollars. Well, that means I already told you we're 91 million under adequacy, $27 million short this year. Those are dollars you don't need to spend on your kids' education in Beachwood, Pine Beach, Toms River, and South Toms River as a taxpayer. You don't have to raise that tax money, but that tax money will be spent on kids. And when I say kids, it will be spent on kids. It's not going to salaries. It's not going to administration expansion. It goes to kid programs and funding our students. And it's sustainable year after year after year after year. And after 10 million, after 10 years, I'm sorry, after 10 years, Seaside Heights, whatever their tax levy is at the time, will come across at the actual value. So for the first 10 years, it's fixed at whatever it is. At next year, right now, it was based on last, it would be 7,885,000, right? 7,085,000, but we know that there'll be an increase. So it'll probably be somewhere between $7 and $8 million, and that will come across for the first 10 years. And then after that, if the valuation of Seaside Heights is $27 million for the 175 or 200 kids that they have, then that's $27 million coming for student savings to South Toms River, Beachwood, Pine Beach, and Toms River. Are you with me with that? We're understanding how that happens? So if you're a math guy, and somebody in the audience last night was, and you talk about the $7 million that we were getting for tax levy for Seaside Heights and all the other things, does that fix our problem? Not alone, but I want to talk about the second part that's not attached to regionalization, but is a possible benefit or is a benefit of a yes on a regionalization vote, okay? And that is a bill that was put into play, and it's on your flyer, S3950. So what does that mean? So last year in August, the governor signed a bill into law, S3950, that promised any school district that reaches some criteria to get their aid back that was cut in S2 for the last 2 years, right? And this bill came about because one of the losers in S2, Freehold Regional, was really prominent about, we got to cut courtesy busing, and that's going to cost $6.5 million in Freehold, and we can't do that. And their legislators crafted this bill that said, if you meet these criteria as a school district, not specifically Freehold, and if you do those things, your aid will be returned to you from 2 years prior. So what's the criteria? We're curious because we're the lowest spending district in New Jersey. We got to reach this. So what's the criteria? Well, you have to be under adequacy. 91 million. Got the shirt to prove it. Are you more than less than 15% of the administrative to pupil cost per pupil? In other words, what's the ratio you spend on administration to our students? There's a state average. Are you more than 15% less than that? Well, we're the lowest spending, so yes, by a lot, we are under that bar. Are you a K-12 regional school district? Yes, we are. Fantastic. Give us our 2 years back. Nope, wait, small print. Do you have at least 5 municipalities in your regional school district? Nope, we have 4. So one district qualified for that. It happened to be Freehold Regional, in case you didn't know. But we know that the law works because we watched the 8 allocations this year and it did exactly what it would say. And the reason why we say we need to have this vote this year is because if we're going to apply that law as the second kind of, carrot to a regionalization plan, we need to have that vote prior to June 30th, our fiscal year, because we lost 2.8 this year, but last year we lost 14.4. So if we pass it and the regionalization happens prior to June 30th, which it will if there was a yes vote, under that law, we would get the 14.4 and the 2.8, so 17.2. A long journey back to where we need to be, counting on each other as opposed to looking in the face of the state loan. That doesn't rule out the state loan because there's still a gap. But with sustainable revenue, we can do more things. What things can we do? Well, the first thing we did and we changed in the process is what's good for kids. And through the discussion and through a lot of the feedback that we got from Seaside Heights, we went back to Seaside Heights and the mayor and the school board, and we said, let's keep the school open. It's going to cost Toms River a little bit more money to do that, but it's what's best for kids. And there's still a lot of savings coming to the taxpayers of Toms River, knowing that we're still going to have this gap anyway. So there was an agreement, and we're going to keep the school open if it's passed up until 5 years, or minimum 2, or at least until enrollment drops between under 125. Now, anybody you talk to in Seaside, do we have any Seaside Heights people here tonight? No, we had some last night, but every time I talk to the teachers or anybody residents in the town, I kind of ask them, I said, based on the redevelopment plan that you were having in Seaside Heights, because their enrollment has been dropping exponentially every year. Did anybody think that your enrollment's not going to drop to the point where your school is not going to be able to be open? They all agree that that's going to happen eventually, probably sooner rather than later, for the most part. But I understand the argument of closing a community school. We are a community school-based district, right? Seaside Heights would be another community school in our district. And God forbid we ever got to the point in Toms River where we had to talk to South Toms River or Pine Beach or North Dover or Eastover or Washington Street and say, it's time to close your doors and we got to move you over. That stinks. So I understand that. There's a lot of empathy. But logic says to me, and this is what I say to them, is you're going to come to a district, you're going to have continuity of instruction, you're going to come to a community that is going to love you and appreciate you, just like we do in all of our communities in Toms River. And all your jobs are going to be saved, right? If you go the other direction and it closes, there's no promise for jobs, and there's no knowing where the kids are going to end up, probably mostly in Toms River, which is okay. And again, I'm just giving you facts. I'm not telling you what way to vote or not to vote. But this is the situation that we're in, and these are some of the solutions. So with all that being said, and I know I said a ton, all right, I want to open it up to the floor, and Mrs. DeMeo, Mr. Thomas have microphones. Raise your hand. Let me just talk about preschool for a second, because I know that's been a question, right? Universal pre-K. And it's a question that the Seaside residents have because they have universal pre-K. So what does that mean? In Toms River, we don't have universal pre-K yet, because over the last couple of years, as we've been discussing with the board, we're not going to have universal pre-K in Toms River until we have sustainable revenue, because I'm not going to fire kindergarten teachers to hire preschool teachers, okay? But a yes vote on April 16th makes that application go in, and most likely universal pre-K in Toms River next year. But as far as the students go in Seaside Heights, we've already accounted for in the tax allocation to keep their pre-K running as is in the meantime. But we do believe that this will open up universal pre-K for all of Toms River, which is a whole nother meeting, a whole nother discussion, and a whole nother crazy and chaos. Okay? So, questions, please.
Krista Whitaker. First, I just want to thank all the teachers that are sitting in here. I do recognize a lot of faces, and I thank you for getting up every day, going into your classrooms, knowing the classroom sizes are getting bigger and bigger, and I'm sure it's not easy. So thank you. We're talking about S3950 or A5755, whichever one you decide to look up. And the money was allocated to the freehold high school districts.
Correct.
So not K through 12. And based on what I'm finding online, it's showing that for 2 years they got these supplements. Thereafter, it's showing 0. So is that based on the fact that the formula hasn't been released yet for next year? Or is it only for 2 years? How long is this going to fill a gap?
It could fill a gap for a minimum of 2 years, or perhaps we think a lot longer.
And have we actually been told that we are
Yes.
eligible for this fund, that it's not like a hope and a dream and
Yes.
in a loophole?
Yes.
We've been told by the state that we will get this
Yes.
money. Okay. And then next, you mentioned the pre-K, and I know for Toms River schools, getting it would be down the road, but isn't the state only funding up to 1,000 enrollments for pre-K? Are we going to supersede that 1,000? Where are we looking to pay into the program instead of
It's incremental. It would happen over time. It would develop over time.
based on different schools get it this year,
No,
more schools
No,
get
the
it?
district, no. It would start off with a lottery system and then utilizing local providers to expand the preschool until Toms River has full universal pre-K. It takes districts several years, one as large as ours, up to maybe 5 or 6 years to accomplish this.
Okay. And then just one more thing, because you're saying it's for the kids, Central Regional, in their response to our proposal, came back with the busing situation and how Central Regional provides that transportation for the extracurricular activities.
Hmm.
How did we respond back to that?
Exactly as I told you last night. You know, the Central Regional.
Well, Parents actually sent me messages asking me how the response was. So I know in January you said something, last night you responded differently. So I'm asking because
Yeah,
parents asked me
you
to
know,
ask.
this isn't a debate. This is a question and answer, and you're going to get information, Mrs. Whitaker. But our students in Toms River Regional Schools, the transportation is the same for all of our schools, including our athletics at night. Okay, our sports trips and things. We do provide busing for our games. Okay, they do not. Central Regional does not provide busing for practices and special trans back and forth for individual things. Nothing would change.
They
for,
actually pick up their kids every Saturday morning when the sports have Saturday morning practices in Seaside to get them over to Central, just so you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Kathy Barrero, Beachwood.
Hi.
Are you going to be providing us a cost estimation of what you feel if we do acquire Boyd, the school, if we do acquire them? Are you going to be providing us your plans going forward on how you plan on spending the additional funding that we would receive from the state? Because you're talking about the busing, and my son being in this school last year, they didn't have busing every day, and I get out at 4:30, and I know by signing him up, I say that I'll get him there, and I do, but it's a lottery. So he wasn't at, I had to take him to certain soccer games because there was no busing provided by the school. So
Last year.
correct. So I just want to make sure that,
So that's
I
last.
have an idea.
No, it's okay. So last year, so that's a last year issue, and it wasn't a budgetary issue. What it was a driver issue. And if you remember, we had the ads out across everywhere
know.
about hiring the bus drivers.
Right.
Since then, since last January or February, those things have been resolved.
And that was my next part of the question, was just making sure that we have, it's not a large number that's coming from Boyd, but
Yes.
that we had enough
We do.
adequate busing and drivers, not busing, but drivers to, accommodate additional students already, because we are on a tiered schedule for them.
Correct.
So I just wanted to make sure that we have the
We-
drivers to do that.
We do.
Okay. And then are you going to be providing a cost estimate on where those funds are going to be allocated to?
Well, the funds are going to be integrated equally into our budget. So when you have an operations budget, okay, that is X amount of dollars, and you have a revenue side of that budget that is $26.5 million short, I could tell you where it's being spent on this side.
Okay. So it's, because you said it was what, 17.2 that was missing that we could get back?
Correct.
Or will get back? if
Correct.
we
So that goes
get that?
against the 27 million that we're short. So
Okay.
that comes off of that number. I need to correct you, Mr. Sitta, or are you just clearing your throat, Mr. Dorn?
Frog in my throat.
Frog in your throat. So no, I am correct.
Okay,
those
just
numbers-
trying to follow.
Yep. Yeah, so the problem becomes much less of a hurdle, but it's still a problem.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure,
Yes.
because there's still a delta there.
Correct.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Janet Lang. I have a question. You said all of the teachers from Boyd, when it eventually does close, would be absorbed into Tom's River District,
Yes.
including administration and support staff?
Tenured staff, yes.
Untenured staff
Okay.
would not be moved.
No, they would be, because by then everybody would be tenured after the
Okay.
5 years, yes.
Okay.
Well, immediately, they become Toms River Regional Schools once it passes.
Do their pay scales align with our pay scales and our
Not,
benefits?
not everyone, but they will come in at the worth that they're at, the dollar amount, so nobody gets hurt.
Okay,
It's all figured out in the study.
okay. And also, would we be renting the building back, the Boyd School back from Seaside? Because we would then be using their building to accommodate who are now our students?
No, so it most likely would be our building, and after 5 years, and it gets closed, and we don't need the building would go back and revert to the municipality, like we would do if that was the case in any of our regional towns.
Okay. So we would be in charge of maintaining that building while
Correct.
we were using it? Okay.
Yep.
Great. And personally, I have mixed feelings because it sounds like it's a fiscal benefit to the children in our town. But I also feel for the Central Regional School District,
Okay?
they would lose $3 million from their budget, which is 8% of their tax levy,
Hmm.
if all of the students that we're proposing to absorb in our district move over.
Actually, much less with the transitional costs, isn't it not, Mr. Dory? The 3 million?
Well, 3 million basically is the amount of the tax levy from I believe, the 23-24 budget. But what would happen is that they would still be made whole. And then by the law, there's a 5-year phase out of the 3 million from Central. So it's not that if this passes, $3 million just gets ripped away from Central Regional. It remains, and then there's a phase out.
And along with the phase out is their obligation to educate those children in Seaside Heights,
Okay.
which comes at a cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So our cost per pupil is much lower than Seaside Heights cost per pupil. I think they're around $24,000. So if the tax levy that Central Regional is getting is I rounded to 3 million. I think it's just over. What is the total projected coming to Tom's River from Seaside Heights when we take the children?
Once we take the children, do you want to go through that, Mr. Dory?
I was going to say that number is going to be an uncertain number because you don't know exactly how many children are going to choose to stay at Central versus coming over to Tom's River. there would be certain grade levels where naturally the students would come over to Tom's River, like a seventh grader in Central who would be entering high school. They would come to Tom's River. A sixth grader going into seventh, they would come to Tom's River. But in terms of the other children, it's hard to predict how many are going to stay and how
Mhm.
many are going to choose voluntarily to come over to Tom's River.
So only certain grade levels will get a choice.
Yeah, just, well, obviously K through 6 or coming pre-K through 6 would be part of Tom's River Regional Schools.
Okay.
If you're in grade 7 in Central Regional, you'd have the option to stay to 8th grade. If you're in grades 9, 10, and 11 in Central Regional, you would have the options to stay. 8th graders would come to high school east. So once you're ready to transition buildings in the regionalization plan, then you transition districts.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, I've been doing a lot of research.
Sure.
Um, just to go back, is there a sunset date on this S3950?
There's no sunset date.
That's been established?
No.
Okay. They could issue one?
The state could do whatever they want.
Right, okay.
Right.
So it's not,
But we're in the same situation, mind you,
right, right.
no matter what happens.
Yeah, no. I mean, I get it. It's a lot of money. It seems like it's a benefit. But on the other hand, I feel like we're putting a price on these 288 kids' heads. Like when you say earlier in your speech, it equaled the total of 9 million to Seaside Heights that they save in tax money. That's $31,000
Right.
per child. All of the tax savings to the Tom's River, what you just said, equals to $132,500 per child. And I just don't want to look at kids as dollar signs.
Well-
I want to look at them as kids.
So I appreciate that statement, but that's why we go through a recipe of our decision-making process, right? What's good for kids? How do we support our staff to support the kids? And then is it good for the taxpayer? The numbers are the number, but the dollar amount attached to that number is for our students and their programming. It's not a headhunting number on children. Okay, we're providing a fantastic educational benefit to children with continuity of instruction from pre-K through 12. And that's the difference. You know, the funding that comes with them is the funding that is set up in Beachwood and South Toms River and Pine Beach. And the truth of the fact is that all of our children will benefit from those dollars. So we could be putting a price on our kids' heads if we don't do it, right? I mean, if we're using that logic.
No, I understand. It's just like,
Sure.
what if somebody in Pine Beach Elementary is like, join the district because it's going to be beneficial financially?
I understand.
It's just, it's an ethical thing for me. Not
This is why we're having a town hall.
understand the fiscal responsibility, but I have a hard time with that.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I do have a question. John Hughes, Beachwood. I do have a
Thank you.
question on the busing.
Sure.
You had mentioned that this year we have enough bus drivers and there's no issues with buses for kids not getting busing.
Correct.
Pre-COVID, intermediate and high school had late buses.
Correct.
Last year, 1 day a week, they had a late bus.
Correct.
This year, there is no late bus.
Correct.
Will that change?
Yes. Yes, we're hoping to reinstate late buses. The reason why you don't have late buses this year is twofold. It's not because of drivers, it's not because of funding. We put out bid packages for late buses for this year, three separate times this year to try to get them up and running for our schools. And then after talking with our building principals and allocations in our clubs, you know, we decided to move forward with the rest of the years and take those dollars in other places. But it's not because we don't have the funding or the resources to do it. We did not get the bids back.
Okay. I just think it's important for the kids
I agree
to
with
be
you.
able to have that, to be able to participate in the programs
Sure.
that right now they're not providing a transportation home.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. I'll come over to you.
Hi, Debbie AC from Tom's River. I just wanted to comment on the person who said about the ethical responsibilities. I was understanding, maybe I'm wrong, does Seaside, they have to also vote to approve it, right? So it's not like we're taking control, they're also going to, so if it's good for our kids and we vote for it, they still can, and also too, as far as the late buses, it would be great if we could get them back, but I'm worried about sports, losing sports altogether, if we don't do it.
I appreciate that. And you're exactly right. Seaside Heights has to pass this vote in their community as well. And if it doesn't, then regionalization does not happen. And then we're back to looking at that loan. And what does that mean for us? Next question.
I have a question about, you said East Dover would probably be the location where they would go.
Yes.
Has there been any discussion about redistricting Tom's River to move, like shift kids into different schools? Or are they all going to be able, like 175 kids going into East Dover?
Yeah, so there's room for the children to be at East Dover. There might be some special programs and different kids. I can't dictate everybody's IEP or different individual needs that maybe we offer in Tom's River, a different program in a different building, but we'll provide those buses for those families to do those individually. But, you got to remember at one point, our schools were K through 6. East Dover had a population of like 1,100, 1,200 students at one time. So we do have the room in the buildings. To answer your first part of your question, as far as redistricting, we did do a 5-year layout of where our schools are as far as numbers go. And there are only 2 schools that saw a really decrease in population, and that would be the City School and North Dover School over there, but since have changed kind of trends and leveled off. I think it would be a big disruption at the moment to do any type of redistricting, but if it was done, it would probably be done at the elementary level and up, because we're looking at numbers that are extremely consistent in our middle and high schools as they stand now. Okay. Great question. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, Jordan Lynch.
Hi, I'm a Toms River South high school student, and I just have a statement. I'm a senior now, so I've been through the district, through the budget cuts. I went down to Trenton during the budget cuts, and I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Sitta for doing this, because I was really uneducated on the whole regionalization. We talk about it in school, but not very much about it. So thank you for informing us. Thank you for answering all your questions that everyone has. And I mean, I don't really know much about it, but I'm glad that I was sitting here tonight and I got to listen to some information.
I really appreciate that. And that's what tonight's about, right? Is asking these questions, making an informed decision, because on April 16th, from the hours of 1:30 to 8 p.m., we'll have a stake at what direction we want to drive our community in. Hopefully what I hope you get out of this tonight are the impacts, how we got here, what the decision-making process is in your district. I hope you feel good about that. I feel good about all of you. And I appreciate you being out here tonight. I know it got a little chillier, but let's hope that the weekend warms up. And I know pretty soon you're going to be in spring break, and nothing's better than that. So thank you for everybody for this evening, and God bless. Look forward to seeing you. Thank you.